You're listening to Refracted World with Terry Geo, Episode 20, Open Your Mind. For anyone who's listened to any of my podcasts before, you know I keep blathering on about how the internet is the largest compendium of human knowledge ever to exist. It's free, it's at our fingertips, it's on our phones, on our computers, on our tablets. It is everywhere, and we have the resources to find out anything and everything within seconds or minutes. And I keep repeating this because it seems that people just don't understand that. They spend all their time on social media and they do nothing else. The internet is so much more. I mean, just everything is there. Anything you could ever want is there. And growing up in the 80s when we had Encyclopedia Britannica as our only guide and teaching materials and library materials that were 20 or 30 years out of date, everything now is up to date. And yes, I know we have to filter through all the crap that's on there as well, and all the rubbish and all the talking from people who have opinions rather than facts. But the facts are still there, and it doesn't take long to find them and find trusted sources and learn something. And the reason I'm dedicating this entire episode to that is because I read an article just today about a man who was dropped from a balcony when he was a baby and suffered long-term brain damage. A third of his brain was actually dead. And so he was told he would never be able to amount to much in life. He became a chef and, he had a quite good life, especially for somebody with a third of their brain dead. And then during lockdown in 2020, like all of us, we were stuck inside with nothing to do. He went online and he did courses in different subjects. I can't remember, I think it was like 3 or 4 different courses he did. And he got all the way through them and achieved them. Now, obviously, he'd had many MRI scans before 2020. And yet, after 2020, he had another MRI and his brain had fully recovered. He now has an entire working brain. And what the doctors have said to him is that because he studied during 2020 and did all those courses and learned so much, it basically pumped new blood into the dead area and brought it back to life. He's brought back his dead brain just by learning. And so, yes, I keep going on and on about how we need to be using the resources at hand because I feel like it's good for us. And now here's the proof. A guy with brain damage now doesn't have brain damage. He's 54 years old, by the way. His name's Darren Jewell. You can look it up yourself. And it's just such an amazing story and also proof that knowledge really is power. But if you, like the probably billions of other people, are stuck in a social media circle where you just open your phone, immediately go to social media, and then end up scrolling for minutes, hours, weeks, however long it is. I mean, we all do it, especially with doom scrolling is one of the worst things we could ever do. Doom scrolling, for those who don't know, is when you're just looking through horrendous posts or newsreels or videos of things that are happening in the world or things that are happening to different people. And that's why it's called doom scrolling. And I know we did a lot of that in 2020. And I don't do it anymore because I refuse to. Yes, I stay current with the news, and yes, I stay current with what's happening in the world, but I don't concentrate all my time on it because, let's face it, what's happening in the world, especially the wars that are all happening, there's nothing we can personally do except protest and make our voice heard. But that doesn't seem to be enough. And so we are not in a power position. We don't work for the government and we don't have any say in what happens. And so I do as much as I can do from a personal point of view, and I know a lot of other people do as well. We'll put posts out and videos or just protest or be activists and try and get our voices heard along with millions of others, which is a powerful tool in itself, but it won't always sway governments and it won't always stop wars. And this is what we're seeing now. So rather than sit here doom scrolling all day, every day, I now have reduced that time to the headlines and maybe a couple of articles or videos throughout the day. That's it. The rest of it, I'm learning, always learning. I'm one of those people that actually get excited about learning, especially new things, or even things that I know of before with new information or just said in a different way. I gobble it up. And I admit that my favorite way of consuming knowledge is now through videos. When I was at school, I was very good at coursework and practical work. I excelled in English, art and design, and drama, and music, and dance, and all the arts things, obviously. I mean, look at me now. But I struggled in things like mathematics and sciences, and even history. But as I've gotten older, I have a massive passion for both history and science. And that's through originally watching documentaries and then seeing TED Talks and things like that, and now consuming videos on different subjects. So as we're talking about learning, I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are just stuck in an endless cycle of social media and don't know where to begin. So here I'm going to give you some suggestions. So my first one is, if you'll watch a video on, I'm going to talk about TikTok because it's obviously small, bite-sized videos on TikTok. So if you're looking on TikTok and you scroll through to a video and it's about the sun, and it shows you video footage of the sun, and there's a brief 1 or 2 minute video describing this big ball of plasma that could hold a million Earths. I think it's a million, might be even a billion. I can't remember now. But you watch this video and think, wow, that's amazing. And I mentioned this in particular because I saw this video last night. Brian Cox was giving a lecture and talking about the sun. And so it was a very short clip from his lecture on TikTok. And my response was, wow, or something, this is incredible. But then others were like, oh yeah, like that's the real sun, and laughing emojis. And I'm like, what? How can you not say this is the sun? Of course it's the sun. Have you never realized what the sun is? And you go through the comments, and then there's loads of stupid comments, and there's loads of other comments that, like, oh, why don't they do this, that, and the other? And if the universe is a vacuum in space, how do we get heat from the sun? Obviously, it's radiation, and loads of people said it was radiation, but they just don't know. So if you don't know something, rather than comment on, even if your comment is sincere, even if your question is sincere, asking a question like, how do we get heat? I don't believe that question was asked sincerely. I believe he was just trying to pick fault with science for some reason when it's a professor talking about it. But anyway, but if it is sincere, don't ask it on social media. And the reason I'm saying don't ask it on social media is because you might not get a response. If it's a big video, if you are getting hundreds or thousands of comments on there, the producer of the video might never see it. I know from when I've been viral, I don't see 99% of the comments because they come in so thick and so fast, you just cannot keep up. The last time I went viral was a few months ago, but I would still be going through the comments now if I did do that. So your opportunity for having a response, a proper response, is very small if it's a popular video. And if it is seen by people who are also commenting, they might just say something wrong, or they might say something derogatory, and you don't want that. You don't need that. So if you have a sincere question, take that question that's in your head, minimize TikTok, open up Google, and pop that question into Google. And it will give you the answer. And not only will it give you the answer, it will give you sources for why the answer is the answer. And it will also maybe direct you to different websites or videos or podcasts or wherever. And you can learn that information within seconds or minutes. And that's how the internet should be working for everybody. But it doesn't. I have seen this very thing been answered in the comment section. Why don't you go to Google? Or I said on one of them, Google is free. And I've had responses like, oh, I can't be bothered, or I don't use Google, or, oh, I don't need Google, I have the Bible, was one of the replies I got. I'm like, are you all insane? Are you all insane? Every single device has Google or has a search engine. I know I talk about Google all the time because it's obviously the most popular and the best search engine, but whatever search engine you use that and it will give you the answer. And so for anyone who ever has a question from anything they see on social media, try not to ask it on social media. Just pop it into Google and see what happens. It doesn't take much to minimize an app and open up Google. I mean, a second, if that, and you will get the answer. You will probably get a very brief answer in the first paragraph and then other sources coming in. So that's my first piece of advice I would give anyone who's wanting to learn more, which I believe should be everybody. And I know that for some people, they think learning is boring, especially if you're of a young age and you've just still at school or just come out of school, you've had enough learning. And I'll admit, when I was in my late teens and 20s, I didn't do much learning. It was all about partying, really. I don't know what the clubbing and bar scene is now like, but I was drunk a lot. I was out all the time and just doing normal late teenage, early 20s stuff. And as I got older and the internet, evolved into what it is now, I was able to learn so much more. And so my second piece of advice is to use YouTube as it's intended. Well, not really as it's intended. YouTube is basically what TikTok is now, but YouTube was started as a place for you to be a star, basically, to put your face out there and your talents and your information and share them on YouTube. But now it's turned into an absolutely beautiful feast of everything you could imagine. And the documentaries that are produced for YouTube are up there with anything you could see on TV now. And there are some fantastic ones, absolutely amazing ones. But the website I think you should go to first is called Kyrgyzstan. It's a German company, but if you type in, you won't know how to spell it. So if you type in a nutshell, it will come up with Kyrgyzstan. And they have a lot of videos on there. They've been going for, 9-10 years probably. And every single video they make is animated by their team. And they have scientists and professors and people of knowledge working for them, or they'll team up with somebody with the knowledge and then make a video about everything science-based. So they will talk about the destruction of Earth or the end of the universe, or they'll talk about the sun, and they'll talk about time travel, and they'll talk about aliens. And you can learn an entire subject in just 20 minutes. And it's all animated, and the voiceover is fantastic. And this is why that channel has become so popular, because people can learn in a very visual way. And they dumb down a lot of the science and the images for the science so a layman can actually understand what they're saying and talking about. And for me, it is the best channel on YouTube. And there are many really good channels, but that for me is the best tool for learning if you're not au fait with a lot of, technical jargon or science or anything really. It's a lot of space knowledge on there, and it's just, please check it out for yourself and just see. The video that came out today from them, or recently anyway, is talking about the dinosaurs and how we all know that the dinosaurs were killed off 66 million years ago by an asteroid, or was it? And so the video then talks about how it could have been from India, which back then was a tropical island. It's worth watching. It's a good video, but all their videos are really, really good. And again, YouTube is free. All this information and all this knowledge is free. And so you don't have to be scrolling through science papers, and you don't have to be doing, coursework or written work or exams. You can actually learn visually these days, and in a really fun and informative way. And that's been my goal throughout everything I've done as well. I love to inform people. I love learning to begin with, but because I absorb so much, I have tons of knowledge in my head. And so I like to give that to people. But I've learned that by doing that, by just sitting there and blurting out so much information, people don't listen, or they don't want to listen. And so I have tailored the way I do that into an entertaining way. So the way I teach, not really teach, but the way I educate people is through edutainment, which is, I think is an awful word, but it's true. It's education and entertainment in one. And people then want to understand, want to learn, and do learn things. And I have a friend that doesn't have a lot of knowledge about science. And so when we talk, she learns so much. And then she's phoning up her daughter and saying, oh, you won't believe this. And it's great. It's great that I could do that for her, and it's great that I can do that through my podcast or through my videos or wherever. But it's difficult gauging how much to be of entertainment and how much to be of education and piecing that together. It's never an easy thing to do. But I believe it's an important one, and I strive to do that in my plays and in my books, and everything that I touch has some modicum of education in there or learning in there, but I do it in a way that isn't forced, because no one likes to be forced to do anything. And if you are of the mind that I don't want to learn, I just want to do fun things, then I think this is the best way to do that. Because as we've learned from Darren, the guy I talked about right at the beginning of this podcast, he literally brought back his dead brain by learning. And if that isn't proof enough that learning is good for us and a great stimulus for our brain and to keep us alive, then nothing is. We also have the wonderful community version of an encyclopedia, which is Wikipedia. So anyone can write an article and submit it, and anyone can add and edit the articles on Wikipedia, which makes them not always 100% factual or accurate. But there are so many people watching those pages at all times and making sure they are fact-checked, or they will put a little citation needed at different statements that are made. And so, as a quick encyclopedia, in inverted commas, as a quick resource for anything you're looking for, it's usually on Wikipedia, and you can read a page in a few minutes. So going back to my episode from a few weeks ago about how the pyramids were made, I used Wikipedia for dates and names because they're all there. Every single pharaoh will have their own page. Every single pyramid will have their own page and so on and so forth. If you want to learn more about Madonna, or you want to learn more about Einstein, or you want to learn more about, I don't know, the Bechtel test, it's all there. Even all the songs you ever loved or want to know about, or the movies or the plays, everything is on Wikipedia. And although it's not always 100% accurate, as I said, it is very much close to being 100%. And if you learn something there, again, you can then look it up online. And I find that Wikipedia is a great resource, especially for historical things and chemical things. So if you're wanting to know the chemical makeup of a certain element, it's there. I mean, there's so much information on Wikipedia, so much so that I've actually, in the past, been sent them money because they're a totally free resource which supplies the world with so much information. And the information on Wikipedia is used everywhere, because it's been around. I think it's been around since the beginning of the internet. Well, the beginning of the modern internet. I can't remember a time when Wikipedia wasn't there. And I value it very highly. And so, yeah, if you want to learn about something, Wikipedia is a great written resource. YouTube, a fantastic resource for a lot of things. Or just Google the question and the answer will appear magically. And I would also suggest the last thing I'll talk about here, because otherwise it turns into a bloody school lecture, which I don't want it to be. I'm just trying to give tips on how you can expand your brain more and open your mind. But my last piece of advice would be that if you ever see something online, make sure you're reading them from a trusted source. How do you know they're a trusted source? Okay, so I can't talk about any other country than the UK, especially as I know that America have their own problems with different news, in inverted commas, sources, mentioning no names, Fox. But in the UK, we have two divisions of news. So we have the tabloids and we have real news. So the tabloids will intersperse real news with exaggerations, let's put it like that. Or will do clickbait stories, and they'll do shock stories. And because the readers of the tabloids usually have how do I put this delicately? They're a little educationally challenged, let's put it that way. Whereas the newspapers, the broadsheets is what they're called. So you have things like The Guardian. And The Guardian, for me, is my number one resource because they go to great pains to make sure everything they print is as accurate as they can find. Because if they aren't accurate, they will be taken to court. And they have done, over the years, they've done a lot of exposés and been covered because they have that knowledge and also all the evidence to back up their claims. So them and the Observer, which is the same company, they will over the years have done a lot of exposés of huge firms and huge organizations. And like I say, they have the evidence to back it up because they don't want to print something that could be libelous and then not have the evidence. They can't just go on a whim and say, Star Wars was actually created by ants. Or I'm saying that because there's a Star Wars picture on my wall, so it's the first thing I thought of. But you get what I'm trying to say. So I know that if I read something on The Guardian, it's as accurate as it can be. And that's what I would suggest you try and do. Find these accredited, good sources of information and use them as the jumping off point before diving into the waters of the internet. So there is also a fabulous website called Snopes, Snopes. And if you see something online, a meme or someone spouting something off that you think, is that true? If it's big enough story, then Snopes will usually have the truth behind it. So especially during 2020, Snopes was huge because of all the misinformation that was coming out about COVID. You could go to Snopes and it would say, no, this isn't true, and then give you the actual factual evidence underneath. I haven't used it in quite a while, actually, because I don't need Snopes anymore because I have these trusted sources I go to. So if I question something, I know I can go to the internet and find the actual evidence and facts to either back it up or disprove it. But Snopes is a great jumping off point, as I said, to find out if something's true or not. And if they don't have it, there are other websites out there that will give you the factual evidence. And if it's a good website, it will have links to where you can find this evidence. So even on Wikipedia, let's talk about Egypt again. So you click on something about ancient Egypt, let's say you're Ramses II, and you have all the information of Ramses II, and it will have little links that you can click to the other page in Wikipedia that will tell you more about that subject. And things like that are needed because we read and hear and see a lot of things that are being told to us as fact. And we may believe them right away, but if someone tells you, no, that's not true, you can very easily find out if it is or not. And that's why the internet is such a great resource. So I'm going to close up this episode. I think you've got so much information there. And I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast and you've listened to me for any number of weeks, you probably already do these things anyway. But in case you haven't and you didn't know, this is how you learn. This is how I believe it's easiest to learn anyway. So YouTube, brilliant for mini documentaries or even big documentaries. If you don't, I wasn't going to mention something else, but I have to. There is also a subscription service to a website called Curiosity Stream, and that is just documentaries of lots of different subjects: dinosaurs, Egypt, outer space, future tech, science, everything. And I pay, I think it's only like £35 a year, and every single day I watch something I listen to something or watch something or whatever, and I'm consuming learning all that time as well. I used to do it while I'm doing yoga, so I'm learning as I'm meditating or stretching or whatever, and I find that's really good for me. And yeah, so maybe it'd be good for you, or maybe you can find some podcasts that do the same thing. And I mean, you're listening to this, so maybe people like me can help you learn more. But learning more doesn't have to be boring. Learning more doesn't mean that you are taking anything away from your life. It doesn't take long to learn. I mean, while you're sitting eating breakfast, you could watch an entire documentary on YouTube. And while you're scrolling through TikTok and you see something that's interesting, you can just minimize it, go to Google and ask it the question and think, oh, wow, that's interesting. I learned something now. Every day, just try and learn something new. And it's very easy to do that in this day and age. And anything you've ever had a question about or a thought about or wanted to know more about, it's all there. It's all there for you right now. So yeah, utilize the free service that we have. Go to Wikipedia, watch documentaries on YouTube, and just expand and open your mind so you don't end up a brain dead person scrolling through TikTok all day, which unfortunately, that's what we've turned into. We've turned into mindless zombies who just scroll through endless videos all day, every day, and learn very little. And especially now the algorithms are pushing for all creators to do at least 3 videos a day, it means that things that are being pushed out are not entertaining or educational. They're just there. And it's just something else for us to push away or maybe listen to for a few seconds. And I understand that the media we consume now it needs to be bright and flashy and instant, but our brains need more than that. We eat so we can live, we drink so we can live, we inhale air so we can live, but also our brain needs just much more than food and air and blood. It needs learning because it's basically a hard drive, and it needs constantly processing new information, because if it doesn't, it dies and you wither away to just some mindless zombie doom scrolling for no reason other than it's there. So even if you spend just 5 or 10 minutes a day learning something new, then that's great. And I honestly can say that it's now fun to do that as well. And it's also great when you meet up with people and say, oh, did you know about this? Oh, how do you know about that? And then you can actually be giving people information because you found it enjoyable. And if you found it enjoyable, you can talk about it in an enjoyable way. And that's what I do. I mean, that's what I do. I find things that are interesting and I talk about them. Not just that. I mean, I also blabbed about myself for the most part of the beginning of this podcast series. But yeah, I just love learning. I love sharing that information, and I think everybody else could as well. So stop listening to this podcast. Think of a question. Ask it to Google and see where it takes you. Enjoy the journey. And that's the end of this week's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I will be back, as always, next week. If you want to continue listening to me, I do have a subscription service now called RefractedWorld Plus, and there are some episodes on there for you to listen to right now. And if you want merch, please go to Fun Created on Etsy, which is the official store. And if you use the code podcast20, you'll get 20% off everything in my store. There's some really great t-shirts, Refracted World merch in there as well. Give it a check out. And I'm wearing one of the t-shirts right now, and I can tell you it's very good quality. So yeah, enjoy yourself. Have a great week, and hopefully you'll join me again next week. Until then, take care, everyone. Goodbye.